Father adopts German Shepherd for his daughter in a wheelchair. What the dog did shocked all. The fluorescent lights of Denver Memorial Hospital's emergency room cast harsh shadows across Emily Patterson's pale face as she lay unconscious on the stretcher. At 6 years old, she looked impossibly small against the stark white sheets, her auburn hair spread like a halo around her head. The steady beep of monitors provided an ominous soundtrack to the chaos unfolding. Outside the trauma room, a German Shepherd's deep bark echoed through the sterile hallway. Max, usually calm and composed, refused to leave despite the security guard's firm commands. His amber eyes remained fixed on the door separating him from Emily, his entire body trembling with desperation. "Sir, you need to remove the dog," the guard insisted, addressing John Patterson, who stood torn between his daughter's room and his daughter's best friend. "He saved her life." John's voice cracked, his hands still stained with grease from the auto shop he'd rushed from. "If Max hadn't found her when she fell." Sarah Patterson emerged from the trauma room, her blonde hair disheveled, tears streaming down her face. She dropped to her knees beside Max, wrapping her arms around his thick fur, the same fur she'd once been hesitant to have in her house. "He's staying," she declared, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Max is the reason our daughter is alive." As if understanding the gravity of her words, Max let out a soft whine, pressing closer to Sarah. The same dog that neighbors had complained about, that the vet had warned against, that others had deemed too dangerous for a disabled child, had become their guardian angel. Through the small window in the trauma room door, they could see doctors working frantically around Emily. The sight triggered a flood of memories in Sarah's mind: the day they first visited the shelter, the countless warnings, the moments of doubt, and the remarkable journey that had led them here. A doctor emerged, his face serious but kind. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson? Emily is stabilizing, but there's something you need to know." Max's ears perked up at Emily's name, and he moved closer to John and Sarah, forming a protective triangle. In that moment, as they stood together under the harsh hospital lights, their story, a tale of love, prejudice, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty, began to unfold. It was a story that would not only change their lives, but would challenge everything their community thought they knew about disability, dignity, and the extraordinary bond between a little girl and her dog. 3 months earlier, Emily Patterson sat in her wheelchair by the living room window of their modest Denver home, her small fingers tracing patterns on the glass as she watched neighborhood children play. At 6 years old, her bright blue eyes held a wisdom beyond her years, a result of spending more time in hospitals than playgrounds. Born prematurely with cerebral palsy, Emily's physical limitations had shaped her world, but never her spirit. "Daddy, why does Tommy's mom always make him come inside when I wheel out?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John Patterson looked up from the stack of unpaid medical bills he'd been studying at the kitchen table, his heart breaking at the question. John was a man whose hands told his story, calloused from years of mechanical work, stained with the perpetual shadow of engine grease that never quite washed away. At 42, the lines around his eyes had deepened, not just from age, but from the weight of trying to keep his family afloat. The small auto repair shop where he worked barely covered their mounting expenses, yet he carried himself with quiet dignity, determined to give his daughter every chance at a better life. "Some people don't understand what makes you special, sweetheart," he answered, moving to kneel beside her wheelchair. "But that's their loss, not yours." In the kitchen, Sarah Patterson methodically sorted Emily's medications, her former nursing training evident in her precise movements. At 38, she'd given up a promising career at Denver General Hospital to become Emily's full-time caregiver. Her shoulder-length blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her green eyes, once bright with professional ambition, now carried the perpetual worry of a mother fighting daily battles for her child. "Time for your afternoon medicine," Emily Sarah called out, her voice carrying the forced cheerfulness that had become her armor. As she wheeled Emily to the kitchen, Sarah caught her reflection in the window. She barely recognized the woman who had once confidently strode through hospital corridors and scrubs, saving other people's children while now struggling to protect her own. The Pattersons lived in a small single-story house on the outskirts of Denver, modified with ramps and wider doorways to accommodate Emily's wheelchair. Every adaptation had come at a cost, both financial and emotional. The walls were decorated with Emily's artwork, bright, hopeful paintings that contrasted sharply with the reality of their daily struggles. Their close neighbors, the Andersons and Wilsons, had initially been supportive, but their discomfort with disability had gradually created an invisible barrier. Birthday party invitations stopped coming. Play dates were politely declined. The isolation grew like a slow tide, threatening to drown them all. Despite the challenges, Emily remained remarkably resilient. Her auburn hair caught the afternoon sunlight as she practiced her exercises, her small face set with determination even as her muscles refused to cooperate. She had inherited her father's quiet strength and her mother's fierce perseverance, combining them into something entirely her own. "Look, Mommy," Emily exclaimed, managing to hold a colored block for a few seconds longer than usual. "Ms. Nicole said if I keep practicing, I might be able to hold my own cup soon." Sarah's eyes met John's across the room, sharing a moment of pride tinged with sadness. Their daughter celebrated achievements that other parents took for granted, and they celebrated with her, even as they fought back tears at the unfairness of it all. The Patterson family was a testament to love's endurance in the face of adversity, but they were reaching a breaking point. The isolation, financial strain, and daily challenges were taking their toll. They needed something or someone to change the dynamics of their world, though they didn't know it yet. What they did know was that they had each other, and for now that had to be enough. The social fabric of their suburban Denver neighborhood was a complex tapestry of unspoken prejudices and well-meaning but misguided attitudes. The Patterson family's challenges extended far beyond Emily's physical limitations. They faced a community that often viewed disability with a mixture of pity and discomfort. At Riverside Elementary School, where Emily attended special education classes twice a week, the divide was painfully apparent. During recess, she would watch from her designated spot under the oak tree as other children played, separated not by choice but by the invisible barriers of social awkwardness and parental intervention. Mrs. Patterson, Principal Roberts, had said during their last meeting, his voice carefully neutral, "We're doing our best to integrate Emily, but some parents have concerns about their children's educational experience being impacted." The words hung in the air like poison, wrapped in the polite veneer of administrative speak. The financial strain was a constant shadow over their lives. John's modest income from Wilson's auto repair barely covered their basic needs, let alone Emily's medical expenses. Each month became a careful dance of juggling bills, deciding which payments could be delayed and which medications couldn't wait. The medical debt had grown into a mountain that seemed insurmountable. "I can pick up extra shifts," John would offer regularly, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "You're already working 60 hours a week," Sarah would respond, her voice tight with worry. "We'll figure something out. We always do." The community's response to their struggles was a mixed bag of superficial sympathy and underlying judgment. Church ladies brought casseroles with whispered prayers, while simultaneously excluding Emily from Sunday school activities. Neighbors would smile and wave, then hustle their children inside when Emily ventured out to their front yard. At the local supermarket, Sarah learned to ignore the stares and whispers that followed them down the aisles. "Poor thing," they would murmur, loud enough to be heard. "It must be so hard on the family." The pity in their voices stung worse than outright criticism. Dr. Marshall, Emily's primary physician at Denver Children's Hospital, was one of their few genuine allies. "Emily's spirit is remarkable," he would say during their monthly checkups. "But she needs more than medical support. She needs social interaction, friendship, a chance to be a child." The isolation was perhaps the cruelest aspect of their situation. Birthday party invitations mysteriously got lost in the mail. Playground play dates were canceled at the last minute. The neighborhood block party somehow always coincided with Emily's therapy sessions. Even Sarah's former colleagues at Denver General had gradually drifted away, uncomfortable with the reality of a child's disability hitting so close to home. The nursing job she'd loved had become a distant memory, replaced by the full-time role of caregiver and advocate. The financial pressure had begun to create cracks in their social support system. Friends grew tired of declining dinner invitations due to tight budgets. Family members' offers of help came with increasingly obvious sighs of burden. The Pattersons found themselves increasingly alone in their struggle, surrounded by people but isolated by circumstance. Yet within this challenging social landscape, small acts of kindness would occasionally shine through. M.S. Thompson, the elderly widow next door, would sometimes bring over fresh-baked cookies, taking time to sit and chat with Emily about her day. Mr. Chen at the local pharmacy would occasionally find extra discount coupons for Emily's medications. These moments of genuine compassion served as reminders that humanity could still break through the barriers of prejudice and discomfort. Each day in the Patterson household began before dawn, a carefully choreographed routine born of necessity and love. At 5:30 a.m., Sarah would begin preparing Emily's morning medications while John made breakfast, both moving in the quiet darkness like well-rehearsed dancers. The early hour was their only chance for whispered conversations about mounting bills and growing concerns. The insurance denied the new wheelchair cushion again, Sarah would murmur, her fingers methodically sorting pills into daily compartments. They're calling it a non-essential modification. John would pause in his breakfast preparation, shoulders tense with frustration. I'll talk to Mike about an advance on my paycheck. Emily's comfort isn't optional. Their marriage had evolved into a partnership of shared burden and unspoken fears. The romantic dinners and weekend getaways of their early years had been replaced by therapy sessions and doctor's appointments. Yet beneath the strain, their love had deepened into something more resilient, tempered by adversity like steel in a forge. Emily's daily routine was a testament to both her challenges and her spirit. Each morning brought a new battle with simple tasks that other children took for granted. Brushing teeth became an exercise in determination. Getting dressed was a triumph of will over uncooperative muscles. Yet Emily faced each challenge with remarkable grace, her smile a beacon that guided her parents through their darkest moments. Mommy, can you tell me the story about the brave princess again? Emily would ask during particularly difficult therapy sessions, her small face tight with pain but her eyes bright with determination. Sarah's voice would remain steady as she helped Emily stretch resistant muscles even as her heart ached. Once there was a princess who was different from all the others. The family's evening ritual centered around their small dining table, a sacred space where they shared more than just meals. Here, Emily would recount her small victories of the day, John would share funny stories from the auto shop, and Sarah would find moments to simply be a wife and mother rather than a constant caregiver. But beneath these moments of normalcy lay an undercurrent of exhaustion. John's hands would sometimes shake with fatigue as he helped Emily with her evening exercises. Sarah's smile would occasionally slip when she thought no one was looking, revealing the bone-deep weariness beneath her cheerful exterior. Financial discussions were reserved for late nights after Emily was asleep, whispered conversations that often ended in frustrated silence. The calendar on the kitchen wall was filled with medical appointments, therapy sessions, and payment due dates, each entry a reminder of their precarious balance. "We'll find a way" became their mantra, spoken in the dark hours when doubt crept in strongest. It was a promise, a prayer, and sometimes the only hope they had to hold on to. Yet amidst these struggles, the Pattersons had developed an extraordinary resilience. They celebrated the smallest progress, Emily holding a spoon for an extra second, a new word mastered, a moment of balance achieved. These tiny victories became their foundation, the building blocks of hope they laid down each day. Their love for each other was evident in the smallest gestures, John's gentle touch on Sarah's shoulder as he passed, Sarah's careful arrangement of Emily's favorite stuffed animals, Emily's determined efforts to draw pictures for both parents despite her physical challenges. They were more than just a family, they were a unified front against the world's indifference. What they didn't realize was that their carefully constructed world was about to change. Sometimes hope arrives in unexpected forms, and for the Pattersons it would come with 4 legs and a heart big enough to transform their lives forever. The idea came to John Patterson on a rainy Tuesday evening, sparked by a moment that would change their lives forever. He was driving home from the auto shop, windshield wipers beating against the autumn rain, when he passed the Denver Animal Rescue Center. Through the large windows he caught a glimpse of a child in a wheelchair, laughing as a therapy dog gently nuzzled their hand. That night, Over Sarah's homemade chicken pot pie, John watched Emily pushing her peas around her plate, her small face drawn with the fatigue of another lonely day. The only sounds were the quiet clink of forks and the distant rumble of thunder. "Sarah," he began, setting down his fork, his deep voice carrying an unusual note of hesitation. "I've been thinking about something for Emily." He glanced at their daughter, who was now watching him with curious blue eyes. "What if we got a dog?" The silence that followed was heavy with possibility and apprehension. Sarah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, her expression a complex mixture of surprise and concern. "A dog," she repeated, as if testing the word's weight. "John, we can barely keep up with everything as it is." Emily's face lit up like a Christmas morning. "A puppy?" she asked, her voice trembling with sudden hope. "Could we really get a puppy, Daddy?" John smiled gently at his daughter. "Not a puppy, sweetheart. I was thinking of an older dog, one that's trained to help people like you. I saw something at the rescue center today. They have programs for therapy dogs." Sarah placed her napkin on the table, her movements deliberately slow as she gathered her thoughts. "John, I understand what you're trying to do, but have you really thought this through? The cost, the care, the responsibility." Her voice trailed off, heavy with the weight of their existing burdens. "I have," John insisted, leaning forward in his chair. "Sarah, look at her. Emily needs more than just us. She needs a friend, a companion who can be there when we can't." His voice softened as he added, "Someone who doesn't see her wheelchair first." Emily clutched her fork tightly, her eyes darting between her parents. "I promise I'll help take care of it," she offered earnestly. "I can feed it and brush it and love it so much." Sarah ran her fingers through her hair, a gesture of frustration and uncertainty they all knew well. "The medical bills are already piling up," she said quietly. "And what if the dog is too rough with her? What if it pulls her from her chair or accidentally hurts her?" "That's why we'll get a trained dog," John explained, pulling out a folded brochure he'd picked up from the rescue center. "They have special programs, Sarah. These dogs are trained to work with children who have special needs. They evaluate them for temperament, behavior, everything." Emily wheeled herself closer to her mother's chair, her eyes pleading, "Please, Mommy? I promise I'll do all my exercises without complaining. I'll even eat all my vegetables." Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at her husband's determined expression. She thought of the lonely hours Emily spent watching other children play, of the birthday parties she wasn't invited to, of the whispered conversations that stopped when they approached. "We'll visit," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "Just to look. No promises." She held up a hand as Emily began to clap with excitement. "And if we find the right dog, we'll have to be sure it's properly trained and evaluated by professionals. We can't take any risks with your safety." John reached across the table to squeeze her hand, understanding the magnitude of this concession. "That's all I'm asking, for a chance to look." That night, after Emily was tucked into bed, her dreams finally full of something other than medical procedures and therapy sessions, John and Sarah sat together on their worn couch. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a clean, fresh scent that drifted through the open window. "Are we crazy for even considering this?" Sarah whispered, leaning against her husband's shoulder. John wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "Maybe," he admitted. "But sometimes crazy is exactly what we need. Think about it, Sarah. Emily could have someone who's always there for her, who doesn't judge her, who could help give her confidence." Sarah closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine the possibility. "I'm scared," she confessed. "We have so much to lose if this goes wrong." "And so much to gain if it goes right," John replied softly. "Sometimes you have to have faith in the unexpected." The Denver Animal Rescue Center stood quietly in the crisp Saturday morning air, its brick walls painted with cheerful murals of cats and dogs. Emily sat in her wheelchair, practically vibrating with excitement as John carefully navigated the ramp leading to the entrance. Sarah walked beside them, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, anxiety evident in every step. Karen Matthews, the shelter's director, greeted them at the front desk. She was a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, wearing a name tag decorated with paw prints. "Welcome to our family," she said warmly. coming around to kneel beside Emily's wheelchair. "I understand you're looking for a very special friend." "Yes, Ma, I am," Emily replied shyly, her small fingers fidgeting with the hem of her favorite purple dress. "Daddy says we might find a dog who can be my helper." As Karen led them through the shelter, she explained their therapy dog program. The hallway echoed with barks and yips, each kennel containing a different story, a different possibility. Sarah's grip on Emily's wheelchair tightened with each passing cage, her maternal instincts on high alert. "Most of our therapy dogs come from careful breeding programs," Karen explained, then hesitated as they approached the last kennel. "But Max is different." The German Shepherd stood as they approached, his amber eyes immediately focusing on Emily. He was larger than Sarah had expected, his coat a rich blend of black and tan. Despite his size, there was something gentle in his bearing, a quiet dignity that made them all pause. "Max came to us 3 months ago," Karen said softly, watching as the dog and child studied each other. "His paperwork said his owner passed away, but..." She lowered her voice for John and Sarah's ears only. "We suspect there's more to the story. He had some signs of neglect when he arrived, but his training, it's extraordinary. It's as if he was meant for this work." Emily wheeled herself closer to the kennel, drawn by something she couldn't explain. "Hi, Max," she whispered. "I'm Emily." Max approached the kennel door slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. When he reached Emily, he sat down gracefully and extended his paw through the bars, placing it gently on her armrest. Sarah gasped softly. John reached for her hand, squeezing it as they watched the interaction unfold. "Would you like to meet him properly?" Karen asked, already reaching for her keys. "We have a meet and greet room where you can spend some time together." The room was painted in soft blues and greens, with a comfortable couch and several cushions scattered on the floor. When Karen brought Max in, he immediately positioned himself beside Emily's wheelchair, his body perfectly aligned to support her if needed. "He's already watching over her," John observed, his voice thick with emotion. For the next hour, they watched as Max demonstrated an innate understanding of Emily's needs. He retrieved dropped toys with gentle precision, remained steady when Emily used his back to balance herself, and responded to her commands with eager attention. "There's something you should know," Karen said as they watched Emily giggle at Max's careful acceptance of a treat. "Max has had some challenges with trust. We believe his previous situation was difficult, but with Emily..." She gestured to where Max had laid his head in Emily's lap, his eyes never leaving her face. "I've never seen him connect with anyone like this." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, watching Max's reaction as she moved closer. The dog shifted slightly to include her in his protective circle, but maintained his gentle contact with Emily. "He's been here 3 months," Sarah asked, her professional nursing instincts kicking in. "Has he shown any aggressive tendencies? Any problems with other children?" Karen shook her head. "None. He's been evaluated by our top trainers. They say his temperament is exceptional, especially with children. It's almost as if he knows they need extra gentleness." Emily looked up at her parents, her blue eyes shining with hope. "He's perfect," she declared with the simple certainty of childhood. "He understands me." John and Sarah exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. The fears, the hopes, the possibilities all hanging in the balance of this moment. "We'll need to complete some additional training," Karen added, sensing their internal struggle. "And there's a trial period to ensure it's a good match. We want this to be successful for everyone involved." The first week with Max brought a whirlwind of adjustments and unexpected challenges. The morning after bringing him home, Mrs. Wilson from next door marched across their shared lawn, her face pinched with concern. "A German Shepherd," she said, not bothering with a greeting. "With a disabled child? John, have you and Sarah lost your minds?" Her voice carried across the yard, drawing curious glances from other neighbors. John stood his ground, one hand protectively on Emily's wheelchair as Max sat calmly beside them. "Max is specially trained, Mrs. Wilson. He's here to help Emily." The neighborhood's reaction was just the beginning. Dr. Reynolds, their family veterinarian, called Sarah in for a private consultation after their first checkup with Max. "Mrs. Patterson," he began, his expression grave as he removed his glasses, "I need to be frank with you. German Shepherds are working dogs with high energy levels. Even with training, there are risks. One excited moment, one miscalculated move with Emily's wheelchair." He let the implications hang in the air. Sarah gripped the edge of his desk, her knuckles white. "You haven't seen them together," she defended, though doubt crept into her voice. "Max is different." At home, challenges mounted. The cost of Max's special diet, regular veterinary care, and training sessions strained their already tight budget. John picked up extra shifts at the auto shop, coming home with grease-stained hands and exhausted eyes. One evening, Sarah found herself staring at a pile of unpaid bills, tears threatening to spill. "Maybe we made a mistake," she whispered to John. "We can barely afford Emily's medications, and now—" Her words were interrupted by laughter from Emily's room. They peeked in to find Emily reading aloud from her favorite book, Max's head resting gently on her lap, his eyes focused intently on her face as if understanding every word. But the real test came during Emily's first physical therapy session with Max present. Nicole, her therapist, was skeptical at first. "I'm not sure about this," she admitted, watching Max closely as she helped Emily with her stretches. "We can't risk any distractions from her exercises." Then Emily's muscles seized up, a common but painful occurrence. Before anyone could react, Max moved to her side, offering his sturdy frame for support. Emily gripped his fur, tears streaming down her face, but for the first time she didn't ask to stop the session. "Keep going," she whispered, drawing strength from Max's presence. "I can do it." The criticism reached its peak when Emily experienced a fall from her wheelchair, not because of Max, but despite his attempts to prevent it. Mrs. Anderson witnessed it from her window and immediately called animal control. "That dog is a menace," she declared to the responding officer. "He knocked her down." Emily, still shaken but determined, spoke up from her father's protective embrace. "No, Max tried to catch me. He barked to warn Mommy when I started to slip. He's my guardian angel." The animal control officer, Officer Martinez, watched as Max gently nuzzled Emily's hand, his concern evident. "Ma'am," he addressed Mrs. Anderson, "this is clearly a trained service dog doing his job. In fact," he knelt to examine Max's gentle interaction with Emily, "I'd say he's doing it exceptionally well." That evening, as the family sat together in their living room, the weight of the day's events hung heavy in the air. Sarah watched Max lying protectively at Emily's feet, his eyes constantly monitoring her movements. "Maybe everyone's right," Sarah said softly. "Maybe it's too much of a risk." Emily looked up from her drawing, a picture of herself, Max, and a bright sun shining above them. "Mommy, remember when you told me that sometimes the best things in life are the scariest at first? Like when I started my new therapy." John reached over to squeeze Sarah's hand. "She's right, look at them together. This isn't just about having a pet. Max is giving Emily something we couldn't: independence, confidence, unconditional friendship." Sarah watched as Emily dropped her crayon, and before anyone could move to help, Max retrieved it, placing it gently in her lap. Emily beamed, patting his head with pride. "Okay," Sarah conceded, a small smile breaking through her worry. "But we do this right. More training, more precautions, whatever it takes. Emily and Max need us to be strong for them." The confrontation at Riverside Elementary School happened on a crisp October morning, 3 weeks after Max joined the Patterson family. The school had reluctantly agreed to allow Max as Emily's service dog, though Principal Roberts made his reservations clear through endless paperwork and special considerations. Emily wheeled into the schoolyard, Max walking steadily beside her, his special service vest gleaming with newly polished badges. Sarah watched from the car, her heart in her throat as other parents whispered and pointed. "Look, it's the dog girl," came a loud whisper from Tommy Anderson, followed by snickers from his friends. Emily's shoulders tensed, but she kept moving forward, Max's presence giving her courage she'd never had before. The morning proceeded without incident until recess. Emily sat in her usual spot under the oak tree, Max lying protectively beside her as she read her book. A group of fourth-grade boys, led by Tommy, approached with poorly concealed mischief in their eyes. "Hey, wheelchair girl," Tommy called out. emboldened by his friend's presence. "My mom says your dog is dangerous, says he shouldn't be allowed at school." Emily clutched her book tighter, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Max isn't dangerous, he's my friend and helper." "Prove it," Tommy challenged, picking up a stick. "Let's see if he's really trained." Before anyone could react, he threw the stick at Emily's wheelchair. Max didn't move from his protective position, didn't bark or growl. Instead, he placed himself between Emily and the boys, his posture alert but calm. His behavior was exactly what he'd been trained to do, but it only seemed to agitate Tommy more. "See, he's getting ready to attack," Tommy shouted, drawing the attention of the playground monitor. Mrs. Benson, the monitor, hurried over. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes immediately going to Max with suspicion. The dog was going to bite Tommy, one of the other boys claimed, the lie spreading like wildfire across the playground. Emily's voice rose above the chaos, stronger than anyone had ever heard it. "That's not true. Max was protecting me. They were throwing things at us." But the damage was done. Within minutes, Principal Roberts strode across the playground, his face stern. "Mrs. Patterson," he called to Sarah, who had been volunteering in the library, "we need to discuss this incident immediately." In the principal's office, the tension was palpable. Tommy's mother, Helen Anderson, had been called in, her designer handbag clutched like a shield as she demanded Max's removal from the school. "This is a place of learning, not a zoo," Helen declared, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the armrest. "My son could have been seriously injured." Sarah felt her professional composure slipping. "Your son was bullying my daughter. Max did exactly what he's trained to do, protect without aggression." Principal Roberts cleared his throat. "Regardless of the circumstances, Mrs. Patterson, we have to consider the comfort and safety of all our students." Comfort? Sarah's voice shook with barely controlled anger. "What about Emily's comfort, her safety? Or does that matter less because she's in a wheelchair?" Emily sat quietly in her wheelchair, one hand resting on Max's head, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Max helps me be brave," she said softly, but her voice carried through the tense office. "He makes me feel like I'm not alone anymore." The school counselor, M.S. Martinez, who had been observing silently, finally spoke up. "I've been watching Emily since Max started coming to school. Her confidence has improved dramatically. She's participating more in class, interacting with other students. Isn't that what education is about?" Principal Roberts shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "The school board has concerns about liability." "Then I suggest you be more concerned about discriminating against a student with a registered service animal," Sarah interrupted, her nurse's training evident in her precise professional tone. "That's not just morally wrong, it's illegal." Helen Anderson's face flushed red. "Are you threatening legal action?" "I'm advocating for my daughter's right to an education with appropriate support," Sarah responded firmly. "Max isn't just a dog, he's Emily's medical equipment, her independence, and yes, her protection against exactly this kind of discrimination." The room fell silent as Emily wheeled forward slightly. "Principal Roberts," she said, her small voice unwavering, "Max helps me be a better student. He helps me feel safe. Please don't make him leave." The letter from Wilson's auto shop arrived on a Tuesday morning, its corporate letterhead stark against the pile of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. John read it twice, his hands trembling slightly, before setting it down beside Emily's latest medical statements. "Due to economic downsizing. Position eliminated." 2 weeks' notice. The words blurred before his eyes as Sarah entered the kitchen, Max and Emily following close behind. "John," Sarah's voice caught at the sight of his face. "What's wrong?" He waited until Emily was occupied with her breakfast, Max vigilantly at her side, before pulling Sarah into the living room. "They're closing the shop," he said quietly. "Mike couldn't keep it running. I have 2 weeks." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Their precarious financial balance, already teetering on the edge, was about to collapse. But Emily's physical therapy, her new medications, Max's training sessions. The reality of their situation crashed down around them. They'd been barely managing before. John's overtime hours at the shop had been the only thing keeping them afloat. Now, with Denver's automotive industry struggling, Finding similar work would be nearly impossible. That evening, after Emily was asleep, John and Sarah spread their finances across the kitchen table. The numbers were merciless: mortgage payments, medical bills, insurance premiums, and now Max's expenses: food, vet care, training supplies. We could sell the car, John suggested, running his fingers through his graying hair. Take the bus to Emily's appointments. Sarah shook her head, tears threatening. In winter? With her wheelchair? It's not practical. She pulled out another medical bill. The insurance denied her last 3 therapy sessions. They're saying she's exceeded her annual limit. The sound of Max's nails clicking on hardwood interrupted them. The German shepherd padded into the kitchen, sensing their distress. He laid his head on Sarah's lap, his amber eyes full of concern. Maybe, Sarah's voice cracked, maybe we should consider finding Max another home. The adoption fee refund would help with Emily's medication this month. The words hung heavy in the air. John reached across the table, gripping her hand. No, Emily needs him. You've seen how far she's come with him. We'll find another way. The next few weeks became a desperate juggling act. John took any odd job he could find, helping at construction sites, delivering packages, working security at night. His hands, once merely grease-stained, now bore calluses from a dozen different types of labor. Sarah started selling their possessions on weekends: her wedding china, John's grandfather's watch, anything that wasn't essential. Each sale felt like giving away a piece of their history, but Emily's needs came first. The breaking point came when Emily developed a respiratory infection requiring hospitalization. The medical bills mounted as John paced the hospital corridors, calculations running through his head. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage, the electricity had been shut off twice, and Max's food was running low. In the hospital room, Emily slept fitfully, Max somehow having convinced the staff to let him stay. The dog hadn't left her side since she was admitted, maintaining his vigil despite the nurse's initial protests. Your dog, Dr. Stevens remarked during rounds, has been alerting us to Emily's breathing changes before our monitors catch them. He's quite remarkable. Sarah, exhausted from sleeping in a hospital chair, managed a weak smile. He's family. That night, John received a call from Mike, his former boss. John listened. Mike's voice was urgent. I found a guy buying up auto shops. He's looking for experienced managers to run them. It's in Boulder, an hour commute, but... I'll take it, John said immediately, hope flaring for the first time in weeks. But the relief was short-lived. The next morning, a letter arrived from their mortgage company. Final notice, it read in bold red letters. They had 30 days to bring their account current or face foreclosure. Sarah found John sitting on their front steps that evening holding the letter. Max had followed him out, pressing against his side in silent support. We can't lose the house, John whispered. Emily needs stability. She needs her therapy equipment, her adapted bathroom, her dog. Sarah finished, sitting beside him. Max shifted to include her in his attention, his presence somehow making their burden feel lighter. Remember what you said when we first got Max? Sarah asked softly, that sometimes hope comes in unexpected forms. John nodded, reaching out to scratch behind Max's ears. We're not giving up, he said firmly. Not on our home, not on Emily, and not on Max. There has to be a way. The truth about Max's past emerged on a stormy night in November. The Pattersons were gathered in their living room, the wind howling outside, when Karen from the shelter arrived unannounced, clutching a rain-soaked manila envelope. I'm sorry to come so late, she apologized, water dripping from her coat. But I found something about Max's history that you need to know. Emily was already in her pajamas, sitting in her wheelchair with Max at her side. The dog's ears perked up at Karen's arrival, but he remained steadfastly beside Emily. We received a call today, Karen began, pulling documents from the envelope. From Max's previous owner's daughter. The story we were told about him coming to us after his owner's death, it wasn't true. Sarah sank onto the couch, reaching for John's hand. What do you mean? Karen spread several photographs across the coffee table. They showed Max, younger and thinner, with a little boy in a wheelchair. Max was originally trained as a service dog for Tommy Lawrence, a child with muscular dystrophy in Oregon. The boy's father, after his wife died, couldn't handle caring for both his son and Max. Karen's voice cracked. He abandoned Max at a gas station 3 states away. Emily gasped, her small hands tightening in Max's fur. The dog responded by gently laying his head in her lap, offering comfort even as his own painful past was revealed. Max walked over 200 miles, tracking across 3 states, trying to find his way back to Tommy. Karen continued. When he was finally found, he was malnourished, his paws bloody from walking. That's how he ended up in our shelter. But Tommy, Sarah asked softly, dreading the answer. Karen shook her head sadly. He passed away 6 months ago. His sister had been searching for Max ever since, wanting to know what happened to her brother's beloved companion. John knelt beside Max, examining him with new eyes. That's why he connected so quickly with Emily. He already knew how to love a child in a wheelchair. But he was hurt so badly, Emily whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. How can he still be so good, so loving? Karen smiled gently. Because that's who Max is. He doesn't let past trauma define him. Instead, he used that experience to become even more compassionate, more protective. Sarah thought about all the times they'd wondered about Max's extraordinary intuition with Emily, how he seemed to know exactly when she needed support, how he could anticipate her struggles before they happened. He's not just trained, Sarah realized. He's experienced. He's done this before, given his whole heart to helping a child who needed him. Emily wheeled closer to Max, wrapping her arms around his neck. Is that why you chose me, Max? Because you knew I needed you like Tommy did. Max responded by gently licking away her tears, his tail wagging softly. There's more, Karen said, pulling out a final document. Tommy's sister. She wants to meet Emily and Max. She says seeing Max happy with another child would help heal her family's hearts. The revelation of Max's past seemed to strengthen his bond with the Pattersons rather than weaken it. They understood now why he sometimes woke in the night to check on Emily, why he was so patient during her therapy sessions, why he seemed to carry both joy and sadness in his gentle eyes. He's not just Emily's guardian angel, John said that night after Karen had left and Emily was asleep. He's her kindred spirit. They both know what it's like to face challenges that seem impossible. Sarah watched Max from the doorway of Emily's room, where he maintained his nightly vigil. Do you think we should tell Emily everything about Tommy? John considered this, remembering Emily's tears at learning of Max's abandonment. I think she already understands the important part that love can survive anything, even loss and pain. Max is teaching her that every day. That night, as the storm raged outside, the Pattersons felt their family bond strengthen with this new understanding. Max wasn't just a dog who had come into their lives by chance. He was a survivor, a healer, a protector who had turned his own tragedy into a gift of love for another child in need. Emily stirred in her sleep, and Max immediately raised his head to check on her. In that simple gesture lay the truth of his devotion, not just trained, but chosen, not just loyal, but loving. He had found his second chance at happiness with the Pattersons, just as they had found theirs with him. The transformation in Emily's physical therapy sessions became impossible to ignore. Nicole, her therapist, had started documenting what she called the Max effect, tracking how Emily's determination and endurance seemed to double whenever Max was present. Watch this, Emily called out during one session, her face bright with concentration. Using Max's steady frame for support, she managed to stand for nearly 30 seconds, a personal best that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. That's incredible, Nicole exclaimed, making notes in her chart. You're getting stronger every week. But progress rarely follows a straight line. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging balance exercise, Emily's muscles seized unexpectedly. Despite Max's quick response to support her, she fell, hitting her head on the therapy mat. I can't do it, Emily sobbed as Sarah rushed to her side. I'll never be strong enough. Max whined softly, pressing his nose against her hand. The gesture seemed to remind Emily of something deeper than her immediate frustration. But you never gave up, did you, Max? She whispered, remembering his own journey, even when it was hard. The setbacks weren't just physical. At school, Emily's improving confidence met with mixed reactions. Some teachers celebrated her progress while others seemed uncomfortable with the changes. "She's becoming quite assertive," Mrs. Henderson, her math teacher, told Sarah during a parent conference, always raising her hand asking to participate in group activities. "It's disrupting our usual routine." Sarah leaned forward, her voice measured but firm. "You mean she's acting like any other student who wants to learn?" The social dynamics in the classroom shifted too. Emily's newfound voice attracted some children who had previously ignored her, while others retreated, unsure how to handle her emergence from the silent, easy-to-overlook role they'd assigned her. At home, each small victory was celebrated, each setback met with determination. John set up an obstacle course in their backyard, using salvaged materials from his construction jobs. Emily and Max would practice there every evening, their teamwork growing stronger with each attempt. "Look, Daddy," Emily called out one evening, successfully maneuvering her wheelchair through the course while holding a ball. Max walked beside her, matching her pace perfectly, ready to retrieve the ball if she dropped it. But the next day brought another challenge. During a routine medical checkup, Dr. Stevens noticed increased tension in Emily's leg muscles. "We may need to adjust her physical therapy routine," he advised, reviewing the charts. Too much stress on her muscles could cause setbacks. Emily's face fell. "But I'm getting better. Max helps me be strong." Dr. Stevens smiled kindly. "Max is wonderful, Emily, but we need to be careful. Progress needs to be sustainable." That evening, Sarah found Emily in her room, tears streaming down her face as she tried repeatedly to pick up a pencil that had fallen, a task that had been getting easier but now seemed impossible with her tired muscles. Max watched her struggles for a moment, then did something unexpected. Instead of simply picking up the pencil, he lay down beside Emily's wheelchair, placing his head on her lap. "He wants you to rest," Sarah realized aloud. "He knows when you're pushing too hard." Emily stroked Max's fur, her frustration slowly ebbing. "Like you did with Tommy," she asked Max softly. "Did you help him know when to rest too?" The balance between pushing forward and knowing when to pause became their new challenge. Max seemed to understand this intuitively, sometimes encouraging Emily's efforts with enthusiastic support, other times gently distracting her when she needed to rest. John noticed this one Saturday while helping Emily with her exercises. "It's amazing," he told Sarah later. "Max isn't just helping her physically, he's teaching her to listen to her body, to understand her limits while still believing in her potential." Progress began to take new forms. Emily started a journal documenting her daily achievements with Max. Some were physical, standing for longer periods, improved grip strength, better balance. Others were more subtle, the confidence to speak up in class, the courage to invite a classmate over to play, the patience to accept that some days were harder than others. "Dear Max," she wrote one evening, her handwriting careful and determined, "today was a hard day. My legs didn't want to work right and I got scared. But you stayed with me just like you stayed with Tommy. You teach me that being brave doesn't mean never being scared. It means keeping going anyway." Sarah found the journal entry later, her heart swelling with both pride and gratitude. The journey wasn't just about physical rehabilitation anymore, it was about Emily discovering her own strength, her own voice, her own way of navigating the world. The shift in community perception began subtly, like ripples spreading across still water. It started with Mrs. Thompson, the elderly widow next door who had initially been wary of Max. One morning she watched from her porch as Emily and Max practiced their routine in the front yard. "I was wrong about him," she admitted to Sarah over the fence. "The way he watches over her. It's like he has an old soul." The next day she brought over homemade dog treats for Max and cookies for Emily. Word spread through the neighborhood about the extraordinary bond between the little girl in the wheelchair and her German shepherd. Parents who had once hurried their children away now stopped to watch Emily and Max's daily practice sessions. Tommy Anderson, who had once led the bullying at school, underwent his own transformation after witnessing Max help Emily recover from a fall during recess. The following day he approached their usual spot under the oak tree. Can I sit with you?" he asked hesitantly. Mom says I should apologize, but also I think Max is kind of cool. Emily's response surprised everyone, including herself. You can stay, she said firmly, but only if you're nice. Max doesn't like mean people. It was her first time standing up for herself without adults intervening. The local newspaper caught wind of their story after Emily and Max participated in a school talent show. Instead of the traditional song or dance, Emily demonstrated how she and Max worked together, showcasing their teamwork and trust. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Local Girl and Service Dog Challenge Perceptions, the headline read. The article featured a photo of Emily beaming from her wheelchair, Max sitting proudly beside her, both wearing matching blue ribbons from the talent show. The impact reached beyond their immediate community. Other families with disabled children began reaching out, seeking advice and hope. Sarah started a support group that met in their backyard, where parents could share experiences while their children played under Max's watchful eye. He knows, one mother observed, watching Max move between the children, offering support here, playful encouragement there. He knows exactly what each child needs. The local veterinary clinic, impressed by Max's impact, offered to cover his medical expenses as part of their community outreach program. We want to support this kind of bond, Dr. Reynolds explained, having completely reversed his initial skepticism. Max is changing how people see service animals. Even Principal Roberts, who had once been so resistant, admitted his error during a school board meeting. The Patterson case has taught us valuable lessons about inclusion and accommodation, he announced. We're implementing new policies to better support students with service animals. Emily's Physical Therapy Center started a pilot program, incorporating therapy dogs into their sessions after seeing her progress with Max. They invited Emily and Max to help demonstrate the possibilities to other patients. See, Emily would tell the nervous children, Max helps me be brave. Your dog can help you too. You just have to trust each other. The change in Helen Anderson, Tommy's mother, was perhaps the most dramatic. After witnessing Max's gentle interaction with her son during a playdate she had reluctantly allowed, she became one of their strongest advocates. I judged without understanding, she confessed to Sarah during a PTA meeting. Max isn't just helping Emily, he's teaching all of us about compassion and acceptance. Local businesses began placing service animals welcome signs in their windows. The city council invited Emily and Max to speak at a meeting about accessibility issues. Emily, her confidence growing daily, addressed the council from her wheelchair, Max standing steadfast beside her. Max shows me that being different isn't bad, she told them, her voice clear and strong. He helps me do things people said I couldn't do. But the best thing is he helps other people see me, not just my wheelchair. The impact extended to the shelter where they had found Max. Karen reported a surge in interest in their service dog program, particularly from families with special needs children. Emily and Max are our success story, she told prospective adopters. They show us that the right connection can transform not just one life, but an entire community. The most profound changes in the Patterson household occurred in quiet moments, when no one else was watching. Emily's transformation went far beyond her physical progress. Her voice, once timid and hesitant, grew stronger with each passing day. She began to advocate for herself in ways that amazed her parents. During a doctor's appointment, Emily interrupted when the physician spoke only to Sarah about her treatment plan. "Could you explain that to me, please?" she asked politely but firmly. "It's my body, and Max helps me understand things better when I can explain them to him later." The doctor blinked in surprise, then smiled and pulled his chair closer to Emily's level. From that day forward, he addressed his young patient directly, watching as she nodded thoughtfully and asked intelligent questions. Sarah's evolution was equally remarkable. The worry lines on her face began to soften as she learned to trust not just Max, but Emily's growing independence. One morning, she found herself watching through the kitchen window as Emily dropped a book while reading in the backyard. Instead of rushing out to help, Sarah forced herself to wait. She watched as Emily looked at the book, then at Max, then back at the book. "I can do this," she heard her daughter say through the open window. Emily maneuvered her wheelchair closer, reached down carefully using the technique she'd practiced in therapy, and retrieved the book herself. Max stood ready to help but understood this was Emily's moment. "When did you get so wise?" Sarah asked Max later that evening, scratching behind his ears. The dog leaned into her touch, and Sarah realized she'd stopped thinking of him as just a dog months ago. He had become their teacher, showing them how to balance protection with empowerment. John's transformation was perhaps the most subtle but equally profound. The man who had once measured his worth by his ability to fix things, cars, houses, problems, learned there was strength and emotional support as well. He started sitting with Emily during her homework sessions, Max lying between them, learning to offer encouragement rather than immediate solutions when she struggled. "You know what, Max," Emily would say during these sessions, "Daddy's getting better at letting me figure things out just like you do." The changes manifested in unexpected ways. Emily started a blog with Sarah's help, documenting her adventures with Max. Her first post, titled "My Four-Legged Teacher," attracted comments from around the country. "Dear Emily," one reader wrote, "your story helps me understand my own daughter better. Thank you for showing us that independence comes in many forms." Even Emily's art reflected her growing confidence. Her drawings evolved from simple stick figures to detailed scenes of her daily life with Max. One particular drawing showed her standing beside her wheelchair, Max at her side with the words "Dreams can come true" written in careful letters across the top. "But I'm not standing yet," she told her father when he asked about the drawing. Yet John repeated, smiling, "That's a new word for you, sweetheart." The family's evening routine shifted too. Instead of Sarah and John trying to solve all of Emily's challenges, they began having family meetings where Emily was encouraged to contribute ideas. Max would sit attentively in these gatherings, his presence somehow making it easier for everyone to listen more and judge less. "Max taught me that helping doesn't always mean doing things for someone," Sarah reflected during one such meeting. "Sometimes it means being patient while they learn to do it themselves." Emily started keeping a progress journal, but unlike her previous medical charts that focused on limitations, this one celebrated achievements. "Today I held my cup for a whole minute," one entry read. "Max wagged his tail the whole time, like he was counting seconds with me." The growth extended to their family dynamics. Game nights became a regular occurrence, with Emily insisting on dealing cards or moving pieces herself, no matter how long it took. Max would watch these sessions with apparent interest, his head tilted as if studying their interactions. "He's not just helping Emily," John observed one evening. "He's helping us remember how to be a family, not just a team of caregivers." Perhaps the most significant sign of their collective growth came during Emily's quarterly evaluation with her medical team. When asked about her goals, Emily spoke up before her parents could. "I want to help other kids like me," she declared. "Max showed me that everybody has something to teach, even if they're different, especially if they're different." The day that changed everything started like any other. Emily was practicing her standing exercises in the backyard using the special support bars John had installed. Max maintained his usual vigilant position beside her, his body ready to brace her if needed. Sarah watched from the patio, documenting Emily's progress in her therapy journal. No one saw the support bar beginning to work loose from its foundation. The previous night's rain had softened the ground, compromising its stability. Emily had just achieved her longest standing time yet, 45 seconds, when the bar gave way with a sickening crack. Max's reaction was instant. As Emily began to fall backward, he lunged forward, positioning himself to break her fall. But the angle was awkward, the momentum too great. Emily's head struck the corner of the concrete patio with a sound that would haunt Sarah's nightmares. Sarah's scream brought John running from the garage. Max was already barking frantically, trying to alert the neighbors while keeping his body pressed protectively against Emily's motionless form. "Don't move her," Sarah commanded, her nurse's training taking over despite her trembling hands. "Call 911. The next few minutes passed in a blur of sirens and urgent voices. The paramedics arrived quickly, but when they tried to approach Emily, Max refused to move away. "Sir, ma'am, you need to control your dog," one paramedic insisted, reaching for his radio. "He's trained," John explained quickly. "Max, shift." The German Shepherd immediately repositioned himself, allowing the medical team access while maintaining protective watch. His behavior caught the senior paramedic's attention. "Keep him with us," she decided. "He's keeping her calm, and his response time might be crucial for monitoring." The ride to Denver Memorial Hospital was tense. Emily remained unconscious, Max lying in the small space beside her stretcher, his eyes never leaving her face. Sarah held her daughter's hand, whispering prayers, while John followed in their car. In the emergency room, a new battle began. "No dogs in the trauma bay," a nurse announced firmly, trying to block Max's entrance. "He's a registered service dog," Sarah argued, her voice breaking. "He saved her from a worse fall. Please." Dr. Catherine Chin, the attending physician, made the call. "The dog stays. I've worked with service animals before. They can alert us to changes we might miss. But first, tell me exactly what happened." As the medical team worked, Max's behavior suddenly changed. He began whining urgently, pawing gently at Emily's right side seconds before the monitors showed a drop in her oxygen levels. "Possible hemothorax," Dr. Chin called out. "Get me a chest series stat. That dog just caught something our monitors took 30 seconds to register." Hours passed in the waiting room. Sarah and John clung to each other while Max maintained his vigil by the trauma room doors. Other patients and staff stopped to watch the German Shepherd, who refused to leave his post. Finally, Dr. Chen emerged, her face serious but not grave. "Emily has a severe concussion and 3 broken ribs. The impact caused some internal bleeding, but we've managed to stabilize her. Your dog's quick reaction prevented her spine from taking the full force of the fall. Without him." She left the sentence unfinished. Relief flooded the corridor, but it was short-lived. Hospital Administrator Richard Morton appeared, his expression stern. "Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Patterson," he began formally. "While we appreciate the unique situation, we cannot allow a dog to remain in the pediatric ward. It's against policy and poses potential health risks." "That dog just helped save my daughter's life." John's voice was low but intense. "He's not just a pet, he's her lifeline." Nevertheless, Morton continued, "Regulations clearly state." He was interrupted by Dr. Chen. "Actually, Richard, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, removing a service animal from their handler could be considered discrimination, especially when that animal has demonstrated clear medical benefit." The argument escalated, drawing attention from other hospital staff and patients. Max remained focused solely on Emily's room, unwavering in his dedication despite the chaos around him. The news of Emily's accident and Max's role in saving her spread quickly through social media. A nurse's cell phone video of Max alerting to Emily's oxygen drop went viral, igniting a fierce debate about service animals in medical facilities. Local news stations camped outside Denver Memorial Hospital, their cameras trained on the entrance where supporters had begun to gather. Some carried signs reading, "Let Max stay in service, dogs save lives." Others, including several hospital board members, argued for maintaining strict health protocols. While the dog's actions were admirable, Dr. James Morton, the hospital's chief of staff, stated in a press conference, "We must consider the broader implications. Opening our medical facilities to animals, even service animals, could compromise sterile environments and put vulnerable patients at risk." The controversy reached the city council when disability rights advocates demanded a review of hospital policies. Emily's room became ground zero for a larger battle about the rights of disabled individuals and their service animals. "This isn't just about one dog and one girl," argued Maria Rodriguez, director of the Denver Disability Rights Coalition. "This is about recognizing that service animals are essential medical equipment, as vital as any wheelchair or breathing apparatus." Opposition came from unexpected quarters. The Hospital Association of Colorado released a statement supporting Denver Memorial's concerns. "While we sympathize with the Patterson family, hospitals must maintain strict hygiene standards. Emotions cannot override medical safety protocols." Sarah found herself thrust into the role of spokesperson, defending not just Max's presence but the entire concept of service animal rights. Camera crews followed her through hospital corridors as she carried Max's vaccination records and training certificates. My daughter's doctor says Max detected her crisis before their machines did, she told reporters, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. He's not just emotional support, he's a trained medical assistant who's proven his value in a crisis situation. Inside Emily's room, away from the cameras and controversy, Max maintained his quiet vigil. He alerted staff twice more to changes in Emily's condition before medical monitors registered any change. Dr. Chen began documenting these incidents, building a case study on the medical benefits of trained service animals. What we're seeing here, she explained to her colleagues during rounds, is not just a devoted animal. Max demonstrates advanced medical intuition that could revolutionize patient monitoring, especially for nonverbal or pediatric patients. The debate intensified when a group of medical professionals from Children's Hospital Colorado arrived to observe Max. Among them was Dr. Rebecca Sullivan, a leading researcher in pediatric care. What strikes me, she noted, watching Max adjust his position to accommodate a nurse checking Emily's vitals, is the dog's ability to maintain his protective role while adapting to medical necessities. This level of training could transform pediatric care. Counter-arguments came from the hospital's infection control department. No matter how well trained, animals carry bacteria, Dr. Howard Peters insisted during a staff meeting. We cannot compromise our sterile environments based on emotional appeals. The controversy reached a boiling point when several families in the pediatric ward threatened to sue the hospital, some demanding Max's removal, others insisting on their own right to have service animals present. Local media seized on the story's human interest angle. "Girl's guardian angel has 4 legs" became a trending headline. Television stations ran special reports on service animal rights, featuring interviews with other families whose lives had been impacted by service dogs. The hospital board called an emergency meeting. In the conference room, medical professionals argued statistics and regulations, while outside, a growing crowd of supporters maintained a peaceful vigil. Many brought their own service dogs, creating a powerful visual statement about the role of these animals in medical care. Emily, now conscious but weak, became aware of the controversy surrounding her and Max. Despite her condition, she asked to make a statement to the hospital board. Dr. Chen supported the request, arguing that Emily's perspective was crucial to the debate. "They're not just arguing about rules," Emily told her parents as she prepared her speech. "They're arguing about whether people like me deserve to have all our medical needs met, even when those needs don't fit into their usual boxes." The debate had evolved beyond a simple question of hospital policy. It had become a referendum on how society views disability aids, medical necessity, and the rights of patients to have their full support system recognized. Local disability rights attorneys began preparing documentation about similar cases nationwide, building a legal framework for the argument that service animals should be protected under medical necessity laws, not just accessibility regulations. The hospital board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Thursday, exactly 1 week after Emily's accident. The conference room was packed with hospital administrators, medical staff, and media representatives. Emily, still pale but determined, sat in her wheelchair at the center of the room, Max perfectly positioned beside her. "Before we begin the formal proceedings," Chairman Wilson announced, "we'll hear from the patient herself." He nodded toward Emily, his expression softening slightly at the sight of her small figure. Emily took a deep breath, her hand resting on Max's head for courage. The speech she'd prepared lay untouched in her lap. She'd decided to speak from her heart instead. "Everyone keeps talking about rules and regulations," she began, her voice quiet but clear. "But nobody's talking about what it means to heal. Max doesn't just help me walk or balance. He helps me believe I can get better." She paused, looking around the room. "When I fell, I was scared, really scared. But Max knew what to do when even the machines didn't know something was wrong. He's not just my dog, he's part of my medical team." Dr. Morton interrupted, his voice stern. "Miss Patterson, while your attachment to the animal is understandable, hospital policy clearly states." "His name is Max," Emily cut in, surprising everyone with her firmness. "And he's not an animal, he's a trained medical service dog who saved my life twice now. Maybe instead of talking about policies, we should talk about patients." The room fell silent. Emily continued, gaining confidence. Last night, a little girl down the hall had a panic attack during her treatment. The nurses couldn't calm her down. Max heard her crying and alerted my mom. Do you know what happened? That girl saw Max through the door window. And just knowing there was a dog nearby helped her calm down enough to finish her treatment. Dr. Chen stepped forward, holding up a thick folder. I have documented evidence of Max's medical interventions over the past week. His presence has not compromised any sterile procedures, and he's demonstrated remarkable ability to detect medical issues before our standard monitoring equipment. The hospital's lead counsel cleared his throat. The liability issues alone. What about the liability of ignoring clear medical benefits? Sarah interrupted, standing behind Emily's wheelchair. What about the liability of denying patients access to proven medical support? John added, his voice steady and determined. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for recognition of Max's medical necessity. He's as essential to Emily's care as any piece of equipment in this hospital. The tension in the room reached a breaking point when Administrator Morton stood up abruptly. This is absurd. We cannot allow our hospital policies to be dictated by emotional appeals about a dog, no matter how well trained. Max, who had remained perfectly still throughout the proceedings, suddenly raised his head and fixed Morton with a steady gaze. The administrator faltered, seeming to recognize something in those intelligent eyes. Emily reached for her father's hand. When I was little, you told me that sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, it's standing firm for what you know is right. Max stands firm for me every day. Now it's my turn to stand firm for him. Dr. Chen stepped forward again. I move that we create a new protocol specifically for certified medical service animals. We can establish guidelines that maintain our medical standards while recognizing these animals' vital role in patient care. The room erupted in discussion. Various board members began arguing points of policy and precedent. Through it all, Emily sat calmly, Max at her side, embodying the very partnership they were fighting to protect. Finally, Chairman Wilson raised his hand for silence. Miss Patterson, he said, looking directly at Emily, you've given us much to consider. But I have one question. What would you do if we rule against allowing Max to stay? Emily's answer came without hesitation. Then I'll leave too. Because Max isn't just helping me get better, he's teaching me to be brave enough to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. The simplicity and strength of her response seemed to shift something in the room. Even Administrator Morton fell silent, looking thoughtful for the first time. Chairman Wilson surveyed the room, taking in the determination on Emily's face, the unwavering presence of Max, and the mounting support from medical staff. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time for our policies to catch up with our understanding of comprehensive patient care. The hospital board's decision to allow Max to stay and create new protocols for service animals should have been a triumph. Instead, it became the prelude to their darkest hour. It happened 3 days after Emily was discharged during their first walk back in the neighborhood. Emily was in her wheelchair, proudly showing Max the welcome home banner their neighbors had hung. Sarah walked beside them, carrying Emily's medication bag. The autumn afternoon was peaceful, golden sunlight filtering through the trees, until they heard the roar of an approaching motorcycle. The rider, a teenager showing off for his friends, lost control as he rounded the corner. The motorcycle jumped the curb, heading straight for Emily's wheelchair. Max's reaction was instantaneous. He launched himself forward, pushing Emily's wheelchair clear of the motorcycle's path with all his strength. The sound of impact was devastating. The motorcycle clipped Max's hindquarters, sending him rolling across the pavement. Emily's scream pierced the air as Sarah pulled her daughter's wheelchair further to safety. Emily tried to wheel herself toward him, but Sarah held her back. The German shepherd lay motionless on the asphalt, his dark fur matted with blood. John, working in the garage, heard the commotion and ran out. Called Dr. Reynolds, he shouted, already running to Max. The dog's breathing was labored, but when he heard Emily crying, he tried to lift his head. Stay still, boy, John whispered, his voice breaking. Help's coming. Dr. Reynolds arrived within minutes, his veterinary emergency van screeching to a halt. "Let me through," he ordered, kneeling beside Max. His experienced hands moved quickly over the dog's body, assessing the damage. "Multiple injuries," he reported grimly. "Possible internal bleeding. We need to get him to the clinic immediately." Emily sobbed as they carefully lifted Max onto a stretcher. "Please don't leave me," she begged. "You promised to stay with me, Max. You promised." The normally quiet dog whined softly, trying to respond to Emily's voice despite his pain. Even now, his instinct to comfort her overrode his own suffering. At the veterinary clinic, Dr. Reynolds worked quickly, hooking Max up to monitors that filled the room with steady beeping. The impact damaged his hip, he explained to the family. "There's also internal bleeding we need to address immediately." Emily refused to leave the clinic's waiting room, her hands clasped in prayer. "He saved me," she kept whispering. "He saved me again, and now he's hurting." Sarah held her daughter close, her own tears falling freely. "Max is strong," she assured Emily, praying she wasn't making a promise she couldn't keep. "He's fighting for you just like he always has." Hours passed. The waiting room filled with supporters, neighbors, Emily's therapists, even some of the hospital staff who had witnessed Max's dedication. Karen from the shelter arrived, bringing Max's favorite blanket from his early days there. "He's a survivor," Karen reminded them, though her voice trembled. "He made it back from being abandoned. He'll make it back from this too." John paced the waiting room, stopping occasionally to rest his hand on Emily's shoulder. The roles had reversed now. It was their turn to maintain a vigil, to be the steady presence Max had always been for them. Finally, Dr. Reynolds emerged from surgery, his scrub stained with blood but his eyes holding a glimmer of hope. "He's stable," he announced. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but Max is fighting hard." Emily wheeled forward. "Can I see him? Please. He needs to know I'm here." Dr. Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. "Talk to him. He needs to hear your voice." They entered the recovery room where Max lay surrounded by medical equipment. Despite his injuries, his tail thumped weakly against the table when he heard Emily's wheelchair approach. "Oh, Max," Emily whispered, reaching out to gently touch his paw. "You have to get better. You have so much more to teach me." News of Max's heroic action spread through Denver like wildfire. The local news station broke the story: service dog critically injured, saving disabled girl. Within hours, social media exploded with support and concern for the brave German Shepherd who had risked his life twice to protect his young charge. Tommy Anderson's mother, Helen, organized a candlelight vigil outside the veterinary clinic. Dozens of families gathered, many bringing their own dogs, who sat quietly as if understanding the solemnity of the moment. Children from Emily's school made posters featuring hand-drawn pictures of Max, decorating the clinic's windows with messages of hope. "Max showed us what true service means," Helen addressed the crowd, her voice carrying across the hushed parking lot. "He didn't just help Emily, he taught our entire community about unconditional love and sacrifice." The teenager who had lost control of the motorcycle, James Wilson, came forward with his parents. Devastated by what had happened, he visited the clinic to apologize to the Pattersons. "I was being stupid," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "I never meant to hurt anyone." "Max is a hero. He didn't hesitate to save Emily. I want to help with his medical bills, whatever it takes." The story caught the attention of national media. A prominent news anchor who had grown up with a service dog traveled to Denver to cover Max's story. Her report highlighted not just the accident, but the broader impact Max had made on the community. "This is more than a story about a brave dog," she reported. "It's about how one service animal transformed an entire community's understanding of disability, service, and sacrifice." Local businesses began fundraising efforts. The auto shop where John had worked put up donation jars. Children set up lemonade stands. The Denver Broncos quarterback, touched by the story, pledged to match all donations made for Max's care. Dr. Chen from the hospital organized a presentation at a national medical conference about the impact of service animals in healthcare, using Max's previous actions at the hospital as a case study. Her speech ended with the news of his current condition, leaving many in the audience visibly moved. "Max demonstrates what we in medicine sometimes forget," she concluded. That healing isn't just about procedures and protocols, it's about dedication, love, and unwavering support. The shelter where they had found Max was flooded with inquiries about their service dog program. Karen found herself explaining repeatedly how Max's case was special, not just his training, but his extraordinary bond with Emily. "We can train dogs," she told potential adopters, "but what Max has shown us is that some dogs are born with an innate understanding of service. They choose this path as much as we choose them." Emily's physical therapist created a video montage of Max working with Emily during their sessions, showing his careful attention to her needs and his gentle encouragement of her progress. The video went viral, drawing comments from service dog trainers around the country. "This is the gold standard," one expert wrote. "What we see here is beyond training, it's a perfect partnership between handler and service animal." Local schools began incorporating lessons about service animals into their curriculum. Emily's school held a special assembly where students learned about the vital role of service dogs and the importance of respecting them while they work. The motorcycle accident sparked a city council discussion about traffic safety in residential areas. New speed bumps were approved and signs warning drivers about service animals in the area were installed. Principal Roberts, who had once resisted Max's presence at school, spoke at a Board of Education meeting about the need for comprehensive service animal policies in all schools. "We were wrong to hesitate," he admitted publicly. "Max has shown us that service animals aren't just aides, they're essential partners in enabling students to access their education fully and safely." Through it all, the Pattersons remained by Max's side, watching as their personal tragedy became a catalyst for social change. Emily spent hours reading get well cards to Max, sharing messages that had arrived from around the country. "See how many lives you've touched," she would whisper to him. "You have to get better, Max. People need to know that love like yours exists in the world." In the days following Max's accident, Emily underwent a transformation that amazed everyone who knew her. The little girl who had once needed constant encouragement now showed a strength that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. "If Max could walk for miles trying to find Tommy," she declared, referring to his past, "then I can be strong for him." Now she insisted on maintaining her therapy schedule, even without Max by her side, channeling her worry into determination. Each morning, Emily would wheel herself to Dr. Reynolds' clinic before school. She'd sit beside Max's recovery kennel, reading him stories from her favorite books. The staff noticed that his vital signs improved whenever she was present, her voice seeming to give him strength. "Remember how you helped me be brave," she would whisper to him. "Now it's my turn to help you. You can't give up, Max. We have more work to do together." During her physical therapy sessions, Emily pushed herself harder than ever before. When her therapist suggested taking it easier, Emily shook her head firmly. "Max never gave up on me," she insisted, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked on her exercises. "Even when I wanted to quit, he believed in me. Now I have to be strong for him." At school, Emily began speaking to her classmates about service animals, turning her pain into education. She created a presentation about Max, showing videos of their work together and explaining how he had changed her life. "A service dog isn't just a helper," she told her class. "They're a partner who believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself. Max taught me that everyone has value, everyone can contribute, even if they're different." Sarah found Emily late one night, practicing standing exercises by her bed using the support bars they'd installed. "Sweetheart, you should be sleeping," she said softly. Emily's face was set with determination. "When Max gets better, he'll need help walking too. I want to be strong enough to help him, like he always helps me." The veterinary staff were amazed by the bond between girl and dog. Even in his heavily sedated state, Max would respond to Emily's voice, his tail thumping weakly against the blankets. Dr. Reynolds began documenting their interactions, noting how Max's recovery seemed to accelerate during Emily's visits. "In all my years of practice," he told Sarah, "I've never seen anything quite like this. They're healing each other." Emily started a journal, writing daily letters to Max about her progress and her hopes for their future together. "Dear Max," one entry read, "I stood for 2 whole minutes today. When you're better, we'll practice together again. You'll be proud of how strong I'm getting." The physical therapy center created a special program incorporating Emily's determination into their work with other children. They called it Max's Warriors, teaching children to channel their love for their service animals into motivation for their own recovery. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging therapy session, Emily surprised everyone by pulling herself to a standing position without assistance. She held it for nearly a minute, tears streaming down her face. "That's for you, Max," she whispered. "You showed me how to be brave. Now I'm showing you." The change in Emily wasn't just physical. She began advocating for herself and others with a confidence that stunned her parents. When a new student with a service dog enrolled at her school, Emily immediately volunteered to help them navigate the system she and Max had helped create. "Max taught me that being different isn't wrong," she explained to her parents. "He showed me that sometimes the things that make us different are actually our strongest parts." Each night, Emily would wheel herself to the window, looking at the stars like she used to do with Max by her side. "We're going to walk together again," she would promise the night sky. "Max never gave up on me, and I'll never give up on him." The revelation came unexpectedly during Max's third week of recovery. A woman named Claire Lawrence arrived at the veterinary clinic, her eyes filled with tears as she watched Emily reading to Max through the recovery room window. "I'm Tommy's sister," she explained to the Pattersons, her voice trembling. "I've been searching for Max for so long, and when I saw the news," she pulled out a worn photograph showing Max with a young boy in a wheelchair, both looking younger and happier. Emily listened intently as Claire shared Max's full story. The German Shepherd had been specially trained from puppyhood to work with children with disabilities. Tommy had muscular dystrophy, and Max had been his constant companion for 3 years. They were inseparable, Claire explained, watching Max's tail wag weakly at the sound of Emily's voice. "Max could sense Tommy's needs before even our parents could. He'd alert us when Tommy's breathing changed, just like he did for Emily in the hospital." After Tommy's mother died, his father struggled to cope with both his grief and his son's increasing medical needs. One night, overwhelmed and desperate, he drove Max to a gas station 3 states away and abandoned him there. He convinced himself Max was just one more responsibility he couldn't handle, Claire said, wiping her eyes. He told Tommy that Max had run away. Tommy never believed it. He knew Max would never leave him willingly. Emily wheeled closer to Max's bed, her hand finding his fur. "Is that why you understand me so well?" she whispered. "Because you've done this before?" Claire continued the story, describing how Max had tried to find his way back to Tommy. For weeks he traveled through 3 states, avoiding capture following some innate sense of direction. When he was finally found, his paws were bleeding, his body emaciated, but he was still trying to get home. "The shelter didn't know his history," Claire explained. "By the time I tracked him there, you had already adopted him. Then I heard about Tommy's passing, and I couldn't bring myself to disrupt Max's new life." Dr. Reynolds, who had been listening, added his professional insight. "This explains his exceptional intuition with Emily. He's not just trained, he's experienced. He knows exactly what a child in a wheelchair needs because he's done this before." John asked the question they were all thinking. "Why come forward now?" Claire smiled through her tears. "Because seeing him with Emily, watching how he saved her life twice, I know this is where he was meant to be. Tommy would be so happy knowing Max found another child to love and protect." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "These belong to Tommy and Max," she said, opening it to reveal a collection of photographs, awards, and a special collar with both their names engraved on it. "I think Emily should have them now. It's part of Max's story, part of what made him who he is." Emily examined each item carefully, her fingers tracing the engraved names on the collar. "He loved Tommy very much, didn't he?" "Yes," Claire answered softly. "And now he loves you just as much. Some dogs are special that way. Their hearts are big enough to save more than one person." The revelation of Max's past became a catalyst for significant changes in how service animals were viewed and treated in Denver. The city council, moved by the combined stories of Tommy and Emily, convened a special session to address service animal policies. "We're not just talking about pets," Councilwoman Martinez declared during the hearing. We're discussing medical assistants who can do things our most sophisticated machines cannot. Max's story proves this twice over. The shelter where Max had been found implemented new protocols for identifying and tracking service animals. Karen worked with Claire to develop a database that would help reunite lost service dogs with their handlers or connect them with new families who needed their specialized skills. Max's journey showed us the gaps in our system, Karen explained during a press conference. We can't undo what happened to him, but we can prevent it from happening to other service animals. Denver Memorial Hospital, following their experience with Max during Emily's stay, completely revolutionized their service animal policies. Dr. Chen headed a committee that developed new guidelines which were quickly adopted by other hospitals in the region. What we learned from Max isn't just about allowing service animals in medical facilities, Dr. Chen explained. It's about recognizing them as vital members of a patient's medical team. Their abilities can complement and sometimes exceed our traditional monitoring methods. The school board, influenced by Emily's story and Max's dual legacy, created comprehensive policies for integrating service animals into educational settings. Principal Roberts, once skeptical, became a leading advocate for these changes. We've seen firsthand how a service animal can transform a child's educational experience, he testified at a board meeting. These aren't just accommodation issues, they're about giving our students every tool they need to succeed. The veterinary community also responded. Dr. Reynolds established a specialized emergency care unit specifically for service animals, ensuring they would receive priority treatment, understanding that their recovery affected not just them, but the people who depended on them. When we treat a service dog like Max, he explained, we're really treating two patients, the animal and their handler. Their bond is part of the healing process. Insurance companies began revising their policies, with several major providers in Colorado starting pilot programs to cover service animal care as medical equipment. They cited Max's documented medical interventions as evidence of service animals' essential role in patient care. Local law enforcement implemented new training programs for officers, teaching them how to identify and interact with service animals in emergency situations. Officer Martinez, who had defended Max during the neighborhood incident, led these sessions. A service animal isn't just working when they're performing specific tasks, he would explain to his fellow officers. They're always on duty, always protecting their handler. We need to respect and support that dedication. The city's emergency services updated their protocols as well, ensuring that service animals would be accommodated in ambulances and emergency rooms. They created special equipment kits for treating injured service animals in the field, recognizing that the animal's well-being was often crucial to their handler's stability. Claire's involvement brought another dimension to these changes. She began working with the shelter to establish a program that would help families struggling to care for service animals, providing resources and support, rather than letting situations deteriorate to the point of abandonment. What happened with Max and Tommy should never happen again, she insisted. We need to support not just the animals and their handlers, but the entire family unit. Service animals are family members who provide essential care. They deserve our protection. On a bright spring morning, 6 weeks after the accident, Max took his first unassisted steps in the veterinary clinic's rehabilitation room. Emily sat in her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face as she watched her beloved companion push through his pain to walk toward her. "Come on, Max," she encouraged softly. "You can do it. Just like you taught me." Each step was a struggle, but Max's determination matched the spirit he had always inspired in Emily. When he finally reached her wheelchair, the entire room staff, family, and visitors burst into applause. "You did it," Boy John whispered, kneeling beside them both. "You're showing us all how to be brave again." The moment sparked something in Emily. That afternoon, during her physical therapy session, she asked to try standing without her usual support bars. Sarah started to protest, but Nicole, her therapist, saw something different in Emily's eyes. "Let's try," Nicole agreed, positioning herself carefully. "Max showed us his courage today. Now it's your turn." Using techniques she had practiced hundreds of times with Max, Emily slowly pulled herself upright. Her legs trembled with effort, but her face showed the same determination they had seen in Max earlier that day. "One step," Emily whispered. "Just like Max." And then it happened. Emily Patterson took her first independent step. It was small, uncertain, and required every ounce of her concentration, but it was a step that changed everything. Claire, who had stayed to help with Max's rehabilitation, captured the moment on video. "Two warriors," she said softly, "teaching each other to walk again." The dual recovery of Max and Emily became a symbol of hope throughout the community. Their parallel journeys, the service dog learning to walk again, the little girl taking her first steps, inspired others facing their own challenges. During Max's daily rehabilitation sessions, Emily would work on her own exercises nearby. They developed a rhythm together. When Max would tire, Emily would rest, and when Emily struggled, Max would wag his tail encouragingly. "They're still working as a team," Dr. Reynolds observed to Sarah. "Even in recovery, they're supporting each other." The breakthrough came 1 month later. Max had regained much of his strength, though he still favored his injured leg. Emily had progressed to taking several steps with minimal support. During one therapy session, they achieved something remarkable. Emily stood from her wheelchair, and Max positioned himself beside her just as he had done hundreds of times before. But this time they walked together, girl and dog, each compensating for the other's weakness, moving forward step by careful step. "This is what partnership looks like," Nicole said, wiping tears from her eyes. "This is what Max has been training for his whole life, not just to help, but to heal alongside." The moment represented more than physical recovery. It showed how Max's past with Tommy had prepared him not just to help Emily, but to understand exactly what she needed during their shared healing journey. Claire, watching them work together, saw echoes of her brother's relationship with Max. "Tommy would be so proud," she told Emily. "You and Max, you're carrying on his legacy in the most beautiful way possible." For the Pattersons, these victories marked the beginning of a new chapter. Max's injury had revealed the depth of his training and experience, making his bond with Emily even more meaningful. Their shared recovery proved that sometimes the greatest strength comes from helping each other heal. 1 year after Max's accident, the Pattersons hosted a celebration in their backyard. The occasion marked not just Max's complete recovery, but a series of remarkable achievements that had transformed their lives. Emily, now 7, stood proudly beside Max, one hand resting lightly on his back for balance. Though she still used her wheelchair for longer distances, she could now walk short distances with Max's steady support. The German Shepherd had adapted his gait to match her pace perfectly, his previous injury evident only in the slight favor he showed his left hind leg. "Welcome to our miracle day," Emily announced to the gathered crowd, her voice clear and confident. The backyard was filled with people who had been part of their journey: Dr. Reynolds and his veterinary team, Dr. Chen from the hospital, Karen from the shelter, and Claire, who had become a regular visitor and friend. Max sat attentively beside Emily as she spoke, his amber eyes scanning the crowd as if ensuring everyone was paying proper attention to his girl. His service vest gleamed with new badges, including one specially created by the city council recognizing his heroic actions. "Max saved my life twice," Emily continued, her small hand buried in his fur. "But he did something even more important. He showed me how to save myself. He taught me that being different isn't a weakness, it's just another way of being strong." Dr. Reynolds stepped forward to share the medical perspective of their recovery. "What we witnessed with Max and Emily defies traditional rehabilitation expectations," he explained. "Their simultaneous recovery, the way they motivated each other, it's revolutionized how we approach therapy for both service animals and their handlers." The celebration included a demonstration of their progress. Emily and Max walked together around the yard, showing how they had learned to compensate for each other's limitations. When Emily tired, Max would automatically adjust his position to provide more support. When Max needed to rest his injured leg, Emily would subtly shift her weight to help him. "It's like watching a dance," Sarah observed to John, squeezing his hand. "They're so in tune with each other." The gathering also marked the launch of the Max's Warriors Foundation, established by the Pattersons to help other families with service animals. The foundation would provide financial support for medical care, training, and rehabilitation for both handlers and their service animals. "Max's story doesn't end with us," John announced, presenting the foundation's first grant to a family whose child needed a service dog. His journey from Tommy to Emily shows us that love and dedication can overcome any obstacle. Claire shared memories of Tommy, helping everyone understand how Max's past had prepared him for his role with Emily. Some might call it coincidence that Max found another child who needed him so desperately, she said. But I believe it was destiny. Max's heart was big enough to carry Tommy's love forward to Emily. The celebration culminated with a special ceremony where Mayor Thompson presented Max with the city's first Service Animal Medal of Honor. As Emily proudly attached the medal to Max's vest, the German Shepherd maintained his dignified bearing, though his gently wagging tail betrayed his happiness. Today we celebrate more than recovery, Emily concluded, standing tall beside her faithful companion. We celebrate understanding that sometimes our greatest challenges lead us to our greatest gifts. Max taught me that, and now we get to teach others together. The ripple effects of Max and Emily's story continued to expand long after their physical recovery. The Max's Warriors Foundation quickly grew from a local initiative into a national movement, with chapters opening in cities across the country. Denver Memorial Hospital's Service Animal Program, inspired by Max's life-saving interventions, became a model for medical facilities nationwide. Dr. Jen regularly presented at medical conferences, sharing data that showed improved patient outcomes when service animals were properly integrated into treatment plans. What began with one dog and one little girl has revolutionized how we think about comprehensive patient care, she would explain. Max showed us that sometimes the most effective medical tools don't come from a laboratory. The school system underwent its own transformation. Emily's former critic, Principal Roberts, became an unexpected champion for inclusive education. The school established a program called Max's Mentors, where students with service animals helped educate their peers about disability awareness and acceptance. I was wrong about Max, Roberts admitted during an educational conference. What I saw as a potential disruption turned out to be one of our greatest teaching tools. These service animals aren't just helping individual students, they're teaching all of us about empathy, acceptance, and the different forms that ability can take. Karen's shelter developed a specialized service animal training program, with Max and Emily regularly visiting to help evaluate potential service dogs. Their bond served as a template for matching animals with handlers, focusing not just on technical skills but on emotional connection. Max and Emily showed us that the best partnerships aren't just about training, Karen would tell prospective handlers. They're about finding that special connection where both lives are transformed. The legal landscape shifted too. The City Council's service animal regulations, dubbed Max's Law, were adopted by municipalities across the state. The legislation ensured that service animals would be protected and accommodated in all public spaces, with special provisions for medical facilities and schools. Claire established a support network for families of children with service animals, naming it Tommy's Legacy in honor of her brother. The organization provided resources, counseling, and community connections, ensuring that no family would face the struggles that had led to Max's abandonment. What happened to Tommy and Max was a tragedy born of isolation and desperation, Claire explained at a fundraising event. Through this network, we make sure other families know they're not alone. Even the local business community was transformed. Stores began providing water stations for service animals. Restaurants created special quiet areas where handlers could dine with their service animals undisturbed. The auto shop where John had once worked established a scholarship fund for families needing assistance with service animal training. The veterinary clinic's specialized service animal unit, developed during Max's recovery, became a regional center of excellence. Dr. Reynolds trained other veterinarians in the specific needs of working animals, emphasizing the importance of understanding the handler-animal bond in treatment plans. When we treat a service animal, he would teach, we're not just treating a patient, we're treating a partnership. Max and Emily taught us that recovery is strongest when it honors that connection. Perhaps most significantly, the story of Max, Emily, and Tommy's connected legacy inspired a broader conversation about how society views ability, service, and the bonds between humans and animals. Their journey demonstrated that healing and growth often come through unexpected channels, and that the greatest strength sometimes lies in our ability to help each other. 5 years after Max first entered their lives, The Pattersons gathered in their backyard for another celebration. Emily, now 11, stood confidently beside Max, whose muzzle had begun to show touches of gray, but whose amber eyes remained as bright and alert as ever. "Today," Emily announced to the assembled crowd, "Max and I are graduating." She gestured to the certificates they'd both received, hers for completing her first public speaking tour about service animals, his for becoming a certified therapy dog trainer. Max's work had evolved as Emily had grown stronger. While he remained her dedicated service dog, they had also begun visiting hospitals together, showing other children with disabilities what was possible. Max seemed to have a special gift for identifying the children who needed encouragement most. "Remember when we thought getting a dog would be too much responsibility?" Sarah whispered to John, watching their daughter demonstrate therapy techniques to a group of interested observers. Emily moved with growing confidence, her steps steady though still careful, Max matching her pace perfectly. The backyard was filled with the evidence of their journey: the practice bars where Emily had taken her first steps, the agility course where she and Max still trained together, and photos documenting their progress hanging from strings between trees. But more striking were the new additions: training equipment for other service dogs, a small office where Emily helped coordinate the foundation's activities, and a wall of letters from families they'd helped. "Max taught me that everyone has a purpose," Emily told a young girl in a wheelchair who had come to learn about service dogs. "Sometimes you just need someone to believe in you while you figure out what that purpose is." Claire, who had become a permanent part of their extended family, watched with tears in her eyes. "Tommy would be so proud," she said, adjusting the photo of her brother that held a place of honor on the memorial wall. His love for Max started a chain reaction that's still changing lives. The foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams, but the Pattersons never lost sight of its heart: the simple truth that love and dedication could overcome seemingly impossible odds. They had helped place over 50 service dogs with families in need, each match carefully considered to create the same kind of transformative bond that Max and Emily shared. As evening approached, Emily and Max demonstrated their latest achievement, a dance they had choreographed together, showing how their different abilities created something beautiful. Max moved with the careful grace of a seasoned partner, compensating for Emily's occasional unsteadiness, while Emily guided them through the routine with confident joy. "This is just the beginning," Emily announced as their dance ended. "Max showed me that when you help others, you find your own strength. Every end is just a new beginning." The German Shepherd looked up at his girl with undimmed devotion, his tail wagging gently. Though older now, he remained as committed to his purpose as the day he'd first locked eyes with Emily at the shelter. Their journey had proved that sometimes the deepest healing comes through helping others heal. As the sun set over their gathering, casting long shadows across the yard, Emily knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around his neck in a gentle hug. "Thank you," she whispered, though the words were meant for everyone who had been part of their journey. "Thank you for showing me that love is the strongest medicine of all." Max pressed his nose against her cheek, his way of saying that every step, every challenge, every triumph had been worth it. Together, they had not just overcome their own obstacles, they had blazed a trail for others to follow, proving that with love, dedication, and the right partnership, any challenge could be faced. The story of Max and Emily Patterson didn't end there. It lived on in every life they touched, every family they helped, and every barrier they broke down. They had shown the world that sometimes the most powerful changes come not from grand gestures, but from simple acts of love and unwavering faith in each other's potential. If you've been touched by Max and Emily's extraordinary journey of love, resilience, and hope, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and experiences matter, and they inspire others who might be facing similar challenges. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the incredible bond between humans and animals. Help us spread these messages of hope by sharing this video with your friends and family. Show your support by hitting the like button. It helps us continue bringing you these powerful stories of triumph over adversity. Together, we can build a community that understands and appreciates the transformative power of unconditional love and dedicated service animals. Join our growing family of storytellers and believers in the extraordinary capacity of the human-animal bond.